Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, Labrador, Newfoundland. Lovely to be here today. Thank you all for taking the time. We're going to be talking about online in Europe today, and what that means and how you can have great websites, online marketing, e-commerce websites for your business to grow online with online tools in Europe. So just while the last of you are logging on then, I think we'll just start with introductions. For those of you who are new to our webinar series, then let's introduce ourselves. So we are, I'm delighted to be joined today by my colleague Samantha Sofici, Senior Online Business Development Manager at IBT Online. And Samantha brings lots of experience and knowledge for companies looking to go international and use online tools like websites. And we are always delighted and pleased to be joined by Erin. Erin Smith is the program manager at the CBDC and really the program manager for something called the Atlantic Canada Online Global Programs, which is what we're going to talk about today. So all of your questions, your application forms, grants, funding, how that works, ask Erin. She is the person with the knowledge, with large amounts of patience to go through all of it and in detail, always with a smile. So based in the Nova Scotia Association of CBDCs, Erin is the program manager also for the Atlantic Canada Online Global Programs. And then myself, my name is Susanna, and I'm Chief Content Officer at IBT Online. And just quickly, IBT Online is a private company, and we are very, very proud to be working together with the Atlantic Canada provinces to bring the Atlantic Canada Online Global Programs to companies in the 4 provinces. What can I tell you about us? We're very active in the US already with these online global programs to help companies. We've been around since 2002, which for the online world is a very long time. Today's agenda, we're going to be, just a brief introduction about the resources for the online global program that Canada's putting forward, and then we're going to dive into sort of an overview first of Europe Online, what that actually means. Then we thought we'd drill down into the 3 big language markets and focus in on those, because that actually has a lot of repercussions for the other markets as well. And then we thought we'd do a little breakout on what are great, what makes a good European website, what makes a great European website, and a couple of little nuggets also about online marketing in Europe, and then circle back about the online global programs for you. And then you've got questions. Please ask questions, put them in the chat box, and we will be getting to that in due course. So what else can I say? Oh yes, this is recorded, and you can you will get a recording in your inbox in a couple of days' time. So share it if you want, or come back to us if you have questions. So let's first just a quick introduction about the Atlantic Canada and sort of the what we call the helping hand for this. So there's a lot of resources for companies in the 4 provinces. And we've tried to gather some of those together and put them all up on our website. So if you go to our website, which is ibt.onl, which stands for online, IBT Online, ibt.onl, you'll find that there's under partners, there's a whole very long page just for Atlantic provinces, which groups together all the information and the landing pages for webinars and so on. But we're really want to express how impressed we are and appreciative we are of the 4 provinces who have really come together to say, what do our companies need in 2020 and beyond 2020? We're starting to see the light of the end of the COVID tunnel and get some vaccines on the way. So what do our companies need in this new normal to survive and thrive? We're not going to go backwards, we're going to go forwards with online tools. They're going to be more and more important as we go along. So how can our companies really reach out, go beyond the borders, gather, grow brand awareness on an international scale Well, the best way to do that remains online tools. In other words, websites, online marketing. So as I said, we have a dedicated page as well on our website, which lists all this. And as I said, also including the webinars. So there's a total of 10 webinars actually. This is number 6. So if you've missed some and you want to go back and talk about marketing, or if you're interested in compliance or anything like that, you can listen to the recordings at any time. And if you have an interest in some of the ones coming forward in Japan or Southeast Asia, we're just adding one on online in the USA as well for the final one. So you can do register and set yourselves up for those recordings or future webinars. We'd be delighted to see you all on that. They occur every Tuesday or Thursday. I'm going to quickly ask Erin to say a couple of words just about the CBDC and the resources available to you there. Erin.
Thanks, Susanna. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Erin Smith with the CBDCs, and we are the delivery agent for these webinars. I just want to start out by giving the funders their due shout out. The support for this project is made possible through the Atlantic Trade and Investment Growth Agreement. This is a partnership of the federal government through ACOA and the 4 Atlantic provincial governments. Our goal is to equip you guys with some digital tools that you need to use for exporting in online channels. And now we're getting kind of in the nitty gritty of different markets and what you need to be thinking about if you are looking to sell online to Europe or to Latin America or to various other markets that we'll be touching in future weeks. And as I mentioned during all of these webinars, really want to encourage folks to reach out at any time if you've got questions, anything export related. Our friends at ACOA and at the 4 provincial government trade departments are there to help. If you haven't met that friend yet, let me know. I can make that connection for you. Lots of programs and services that are available right now that you could take advantage of. I'll also give a quick mention to the second component of the online global programs. We'll talk a little bit more at the end about that, but just wanted to make you aware we've got funding support available to help with the creation of a localized website. So this component, it offsets the cost of working with IBT Online to create a website for your preferred target market. Funding's up to $15,000. The term website localization isn't familiar to you. I'd encourage you to go back and watch the first webinar from this series. It's on the IBT Online website. You can go and take a look at that, and it's got all kinds of information about what exactly website localization is. Spots are limited for this. It is application based. The links are there on the screen, and they'll put them in the chat, I think, at some point during the webinar today. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And I think that's probably all you need to hear from me from now. I'm here to the end for questions as well. If you've got anything, feel free to put those in the chat for me at the end. So let's learn about Europe. Thanks, Susanna.
Thank you, Erin. Indeed, we'll put the full URL links in the chat box. So let's, as Erin said, let's learn about Europe. Let's go Europe Online. And why don't we get Samantha to talk us through this part?
Absolutely. Thank you, Susanna. So it's no secret that Europe is a highly connected and very developed market. And with more cell phone connections than people, and with 85% of the population, or I'm sorry, 84% of the population considered internet users, this is great news to Canadian exporters. So if you're interested in exporting into Europe, you can be confident in thinking that the grand majority of the people that your business plans on interacting with or trying to reach out to, so your prospective partners, distributors, customers, etc., are all online, and a ton of them are considered active social media users, meaning they went on a social media site at least once within the past 30 days. Also keep in mind that this is a snapshot taken of Europe in January, so before COVID-19 and the connectivity across the world. So people were connected back in January, and they're even more so now. One thing about Europe that you just cannot ignore is the prominence of e-commerce. With about 8 out of 10 EU internet users searching online for goods and services, you need to have a really great local website
Oops, I can't hear Samantha anymore. I think we're going to go, oh, well, a little technical glitch. I'm just going to pick up from where Samantha left off, and I think she's going to try to log back in. So we're just talking about sort of e-commerce and how large that is across Europe. There are three big dominant players there. The UK, which is one of the largest e-commerce markets, actually in the world, I think it's number 4, and then France and Germany as well. But note how much some of those laggards are pulling up. I mean, Romania and Bulgaria up 30% each. That was last year. That was 2019. This year across Europe in 2020, like the rest of the world, we've seen sort of double-digit numbers across Europe. I mean, the US I think is up 30%. Europe is up at about most countries are up again over 30%. So the second slide here, the second graph here shows you where they are across all the European. It's a bit fuzzy how you can read it, but sort of this is again this is 2019 in terms of numbers. As you can see, this is the percentage of the population shopping online. So Switzerland 80%, UK 87%, but even countries like Germany, which can be quite sort of reticent about online activities, are 79, 80% and things. So European average 60%. So e-commerce is a very, very ingrained part of the European experience. Very, as I said, very ingrained, very adapted. And that's not just B2C. It is very, very much B2B. And, we do emphasize this quite a bit. Business to business e-commerce is about 3 times the size of business to consumer. It's vast. And if you are a manufacturer, and you're not in some way selling online, you're really, I think, missing a whole route to market in there. Even if you don't want the final, even if you say, well, we're very specific and customized, you can have an online platform that works for you right up until the request a quote. So you have basically an e-commerce site without the payment gateway. And that's what you'll find that a lot of European companies do. I mean, 80% of European businesses have their own websites, 40% are active social media. And then I've been looking at a study that came out just recently that was saying sort of something like 74% of the companies, these are manufacturers, they interviewed about 150 European manufacturers, 74% of them are working on e-commerce websites at the moment. And the rest have plans to do so. So there's really this knowledge, very strong knowledge, and very strong trend across Europe to say even B2B companies need stronger websites with some kind of e-commerce enablement in it. One of the difficulties we have about talking about Europe, and perhaps I should have even started with this, is what is Europe? Some of the slides we had earlier counted a very big Europe, which include Scandinavians, include Switzerland, perhaps also include Turkey, perhaps also include parts of the former USSR, I mean, Ukraine, for example. But for the rest of this webinar, we'll really be focusing much more on the European Union plus the UK. So we're really going to be focusing in on the big countries. I mean, if you have an interest in another country, websites work perfectly well there too. But we're going to be focusing on the European Union now when we're talking about from now on. Pretty large place, 27 countries. Obviously, that's minus the UK. Not just shy of 500 million people. 86% internet penetration rate in Europe. So in the EU. So really a very plugged in place. And as Samantha was saying before she got cut off, it is a very active, plugged in market, very responsive. And certainly you would be expected as a company to have a website, to be active on social media and so on, at least on LinkedIn or on Facebook, at least one media thing. And then, as I said earlier, very active e-shopping as well. So in terms of GDP, 15.6 trillion, It's less than the U.S., but still a large enough market to make a good business case for you from the Atlantic provinces. So let's now drill down into the three major European markets. And I guess the first that I wanted to really talk about was Germany. And where to start? I mean, let's start with Germany's place in the world today. So it's the largest single population with 83 million people in Europe, in Germany. That's defined by its borders. But if you say there's 83 million, but how many are actually German speaking? Well, then let's include, if you include Austria, little parts of Switzerland, parts of Liechtenstein that border along Poland, some bits of the Netherlands, in the Czech Republic even, you're quickly getting up to about 100 million people. So if you wanted to look at a German website, you could actually say this is worth 100 million people that I can reach through a German website. Obviously, that's something worth keeping in mind when you're looking and choosing which websites to go for in Europe. And obviously, it's in terms of GDP, it's an absolute powerhouse, number 4 in the world. And driven by its exports. The exports, it's number 3 in the world for exports. So really punching above its weight. It exports as much as it exports as much as the U.S., for example, year after year or more. Exports are equivalent to about a third of the GDP of Germany, and obviously it's also built on this Mittelstand, the so-called Mittelstand companies, which are family-owned, manufacturing, niche, very high quality, and from their get-go, export-orientated. But from our point of view, Germany online, what does that mean? As I talked about that sort of sphere of influence, that 100 million people that we could actually look at. I've listed some of the countries there that you can actually dip into with a German website. But Germany on its own, as I said, 83 million people. Mobile phone connections equals 110% of the population. So many people walk around with 2 mobile phone connections. And that also goes to show you how much mobile phones are becoming really a very, very valuable tool, business tool across Germany. So this is not just the case in new mobile markets like you could have in Latin America or something. Even places like very established like Germany are increasingly using mobile phones on that. Internet penetration rate, 93%. Nothing to say about that, huge. But what's really interesting is the relative low level of social media. Social media in Germany is only 45% of internet users are active social media, and it's very specific. Social media in Germany is very, very defined. Twitter is not considered serious, for example, but it's quite active, but it's not for a company, I would say, as a generalization. LinkedIn is very, very prominent in Germany and used a lot for companies. But Germany also has its own version of LinkedIn called Xing. And Xing is very active as well for specific pockets. Like if you wanted to reach, I don't know, machine cutters, they would have their own environment on Xing, and you could really reach into them, which is an interesting way. The largest single internet population in Europe at 78 million people, which is impressive. And it's growing strongly. So I said internet, the social media penetration was not great at 45%, but it's growing at 6.5%. So definitely, as people are as companies especially, are taking up more and more of social media and using it more and more. You are finding it more and more used across. The biggest one, obviously, things like WhatsApp, but the biggest single platform that people use is YouTube, by quite a long way, actually. So much more so than Facebook. And Germans use YouTube, like many markets, use YouTube as a search engine. So they go onto YouTube and they say, where can I find what's the best lobster. What's the best machine tool that I can find in this thing, whatever. So they'll use YouTube like a search engine, and we'll get onto that later at a later point. A couple of characteristics, and these are very much generalizations at this point. A couple of characteristics of German companies on social media. They're discreet. They don't react. They probably don't engage. Doesn't mean they don't convert to a lead and buy your product. It means that they might just discreetly say, okay, yes, I like you, that's fine, but they're not going to be jumping up and down and putting emojis on your Facebook page. They're just a little tick, that's it. They are very wary of data privacy and very wary then of disliking sharing information. So any contact forms have to be quite straight up, simple, and the least possible information. Very, very aware of compliance and regulations, and I will get back to that later. Beware, they do leave reviews. So while I said they're not going to be engaging with you with like lots of little emojis, but if they use a product and they like it, or if they don't like it, they will leave a review on it. So watch out that space. Make sure that you're responding. Great German websites, and again, we'll drill down into this more later. First of all, they're in German. You know, a German company has, the internet is just way too competitive these days not to have a German website if you have German prospects. They have everything they need in German already. So if you don't have a German website, they're like, I can't bother to go on to yours in any, you know, unless someone's very determined. They're just not going to bother. They're just going to say, well, I can find a similar product on a German website. So, you know, it's really, really important to find the right keywords. And I've given you an example of a funny one because Germans like to compound words, which is why they get so long. The good news is they like abbreviations too, but you need to make sure that you have the right keyword for this. So be careful on your keywords. It's really important. The German websites are really important to get the SEO right. Make sure, obviously, you have good compliant websites and regulations and very strong content. Nothing flippant, lots of information, lots of data sheets, you know, add rather than subtract on those German websites. Moving on to the UK, quite a different market, actually. Let's talk about the UK's place in the world first. Number of people who speak English in the world is I don't know, apparently it's over 2 billion people in the world out of 7 billion speak English very well. So, you know, it is the language across the world. So that really boosts the UK's place in the world. But of its place just on its own, it's number 3 in Europe in terms of population, 66 million. So the third largest in the EU after, or in Europe, I should say, after Germany and France. But the UK punches above its weight because of the language and that sort of thing. The little table here on the bottom just shows you an idea of how many people in the world speak English as first, second language, or even third language. Over, as I said, 2.3 billion people. And over 63 different countries count English as one of their major languages. So pretty impressive. Now, UK online. Interesting that it's, you know, we said 67 million people basically. That's updated for January of this year. Again, a very mobile friendly market, and your websites have definitely got to be mobile enabled. Penetration rate of the internet is at 96%. So again, similar to Germany in that sense, and a very, very active social media, and very active on the internet as well. If you look at the number on social media, 66%, so 2/3 of the people on the internet are active social media users. And in terms of time spent, I know the UK has a very large time spent on social media. So average time spent in the UK online is nearly 7 hours a day for the UK. And then social media is more than 3.5 hours a day on social media. So it's very strong on that side. It's also the absolute champion of e-commerce. If you remember that slide from previously, I think it's number 4 in the world, but by far the largest in Europe. There's a famous saying about sort of England being a nation of shopkeepers. Well, definitely they're a nation of online shoppers as well for that. So that's something we'll come back to in a moment as well. Then just moving on to our third market, France. France, where is that in the world? Well, one thing about France is it's the single largest country in Europe geographically. And it's really defined also by its borders. It has borders 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different countries. And that's one of the major defining characteristics really of it. In terms of population, as I said, it's second in large. Number 3 in Europe, 6th in the world in terms of GDP. It's very, very dominated also by the Paris Basin, which is the single largest region by population in Europe, and one of the largest in terms of GDP as well, if you take the greater Paris region. France is also known business-wise as a gateway to North Africa, West Africa, parts of the Mediterranean, and so on. So it really is also seen as that gateway. And if we look at France online, 65 million of them, 100% mobile phone connections and internet users at pretty well 90% as well, and very active social media users. They as well have, similar to Germany, they have their own internet environment, Franco-French environment as well, similar to the German one. For example, there's Viadio, equivalent to Zing or LinkedIn, and then they also have very strong e-commerce players. France is no mean shopper either. And what's interesting as well is that French e-commerce players have European-wide stretch at the moment. So one of the options one could go for is looking at a French platform for e-commerce, because they, Cdiscount, Fnac, all those ones have European stretch. Great French websites are obviously in French, and they love YouTube. So really that would be one of the key things you want to have on your website. It has a lot of French references as well, and strong social media. So those are the things we recommend in terms of French websites. Let's talk generally now about European websites and online marketing, about sort of European best practices. I don't know if Samantha is with us back. Are you back, Samantha?
I think so.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent. So sorry about that.
No worries. No worries. Okay. Why don't you take this bit then? People are bored of my voice. You take this part.
Wonderful. So in order to reach, to connect, and communicate with people in Europe, you need to localize your website. As you saw in the previous slides, people in France interact very differently with you and with the web than people in Germany, for example. So each buyer persona will more than likely interact in a different way with you as a company. So we've been talking about website localization throughout this whole series, and if you want to learn more about the specifics of website localization and what that entails and what that means, you can go back to our first webinar of the series, and where we take a real deep dive about what website localization is and how it can help. But for the sake of this webinar, your online presence absolutely has to be localized. We can't emphasize that enough. In order to do business in Europe. Between the language preferences, the cultural differences, the regulatory compliance, which I know Susanna will touch on in a little bit, you absolutely need to localize your site so that the search engines, aka Google, can find you. You need to make it as easy as possible for Google to recognize that your website is made for that specific market. And you do so by these things on the slide. So everything from registered domain names to hosting within the market, making sure that you're compliant, using the proper keywords, etc., etc. But for the sake of the Europe webinar, one part of localization that I think is worth talking about is domain names. So each country has their own localized domain name, like .co.uk for the UK, .fr for France, .de for Germany. And as you can see in these examples, and what's nice about domain names in Europe is that they're not very restricted. So unlike other places, you don't have to have passport numbers or local addresses or anything like that. There are some restrictions, but they're not that bad. And they aren't very expensive. So you can purchase them on things like EuroDNS or Nexus. One thing that is interesting here as well is the .eu domain name. So what's interesting about .eu is that you can purchase it. It is like a regional domain name. A lot of Canadians and a lot of people in the US purchase their domain names off of GoDaddy, but GoDaddy does not have regional specific domains. So to purchase it, you have to go on something like EuroDNS or Nexus. But what's interesting about .eu is that people in Europe recognize it as a European domain name, but Google doesn't. So Google doesn't think that Google recognizes it as strictly EU. So it wouldn't consider the UK, for example. A .eu website wouldn't show up in the Google search engine if there are other websites that are more relevant to the UK user. So Google takes it quite literally for the EU market and not Europe in general. So you have to take that into consideration if you're thinking about doing a .eu. And when deciding between a .eu or something more specific like a .fr or .de, it's kind of like a laser versus a shotgun effect. And so if you want to be very specific, if you have a distributor in Germany, a ton of customers in the UK, something like that, where you want to focus specifically on that market, we always suggest that you get a country-specific domain name, just so that it's focused on the buyer persona that you're trying to reach, and it's more of that laser approach. However, if you are a company that has just people all over Europe, you don't really have a strategy yet as to which countries you really want to focus on, a .eu might be a better option, and then you have to decide in what major language do you want to translate it in. Do you want to have it in English for Europe? Do you want to have it in French and German? And that's a decision that you're going to have to make. So that concludes domain names, and I think I'm going to hand over to Susanna for regulatory compliance.
Yeah, online compliance is really important in Europe. Europe is definitely a leader, worldwide leader in data compliance and obsessed with it. It's not going away, it's getting stronger. And I know the US is beginning to move that way too. I don't know if anybody noticed, but in the recent US election, California actually voted in to, as part of their, I don't know, their boxes that they ticked, to basically have something very, very similar to GDPR effective as of 2023, California. So anyway, that's the sideline. In Europe, GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation. It is absolutely obligatory, and if you're a Canadian company doing business in Europe, you need to have at least a minimum outside of compliancy here. And the big thing is you cannot transfer data outside the EU unless you're GDPR compliant. We did an entire webinar on compliance, and if anyone has a real interest in that, and then you can go back and go through that webinar. But just as a nugget, as a takeaway, it's the good news is one set of rules for the entire EU. And the core is basically that EU citizens control their rights, and it's a clear understanding that the data belongs to an EU citizen, and there are real sanctions and real fines if you are caught not compliant at all. And if you're wondering if it applies to you, if you're doing business in Europe, it does. End of story. Yes. So here's a couple of examples of, the basics that you would need in terms of GDPR compliance for your website. And that's cookies and privacy policy. Both are clear opt-in. It's not like if you continue, we assume that you agree. You actually have to tick a box. You have to say, yes, I accept. And you have to be able to click and say, tell me about what it is, Datenschutzerklärung, or Politik und kommerzielle cookies. You have to have something which is absolutely clear on your website, easy to understand, easy to read, and easily explainable to the audience. So absolutely clear. In addition to that, German websites have a little addition called an impressum, which is basically about authorship. Who does this website belong to? Who claims responsibility for this website? Who wrote the thing? And that is basically you as a company. You as a company are responsible for your website. This is, and you have the responsibility for it and the control of it. So, just to say, Politik to cookies has to be, as I said, very clear, very easy to understand. And so there you go. That's compliance. I said there's a whole webinar on the whole thing if you want to learn more. Let's turn back to Samantha and talk about search engine optimization.
Excellent. Thank you. So another piece of localization that is absolutely worth mentioning in this webinar, especially for Europe, is search engine optimization for localization. So Google in Europe is absolutely huge. It has 90%, at least 90% market share across all of Europe. And here you see Germany, Hungary, the UK, Netherlands, and Greece, each with their own Google country-specific search engine. So no matter where you are, there is a localized version, and they are always searcher-centric for the people that are within that market. What's important to note about Google and search engines is that it's not only Google, but things like YouTube, Facebook, Amazon, they all act like search engines as well in the region. So when you're localizing your site, when you're localizing your online marketing, you want to make sure that it is very searcher-centric so that it helps Google recognize you as a European, kind of trying to reach out to the European customers. And as part of search engine optimization, and we actually went into really fine detail in a previous webinar all about international online marketing, also on our website. So as you're checking out website localization and compliance, you can also take a look at online marketing. But here it's just worth mentioning that for when you're doing your SEO, when you're doing your keyword research, when you're doing all of your marketing and efforts and on your website and your social media, you need to do proper keyword research. And you can see why it's so important based on this example. So you need to make sure that you're using the same language and the exact kind of keywords that your target audience is using in their search if you want to rank high and be competitive in the market. So as we mentioned before, using native-like language will help you build that trust. Your content will feel local, relevant, genuine, and creating a really great local user experience. So in this example, we have a word that's very common, so train. And we researched it in 2 markets. We researched it in Brazil and in Portugal. And we found that 95% of the people searching for the word train in Brazil use the word trem. However, if you go to Portugal, only 2% use trem and 98% use comboio. So if you're a Canadian company that's selling some sort of part, trinket, anything having to do with trades, and you're trying to reach the Portuguese market, the one in Portugal, but you're using trem in all of your social media, your website, and everything on the web, you are going to be pretty much invisible because only 2% of the people in Portugal are using the word trem versus comboio. So you're pretty much just throwing money away and trying to advertise to an audience that isn't really there with that keyword. So it's so important to please do your keyword research when you're doing your research for both social media and for your websites. And here is a slide about online marketing in Europe. And like I said, we have a whole webinar on this. But it's important to say that your buyer personas are going to be different across Europe, as we saw with each major market profile and how people interact with the web. So here what we did is we did a 2 campaigns for Easter time, one in the UK and one in Germany for primary school teachers. And our main objective was to build brand awareness and build pixel audience for persona. What we learned from this is that the campaign in Germany ended up being a whole lot bigger and more impressive than the one in the UK. Because in Germany, Easter's a really, really big deal. So we decided to dedicate a lot more time and a lot more resources to our campaign in Germany versus the one in the UK. So instead of just doing 1 or 2 Instagram posts based off of a blog, which is what we did for the UK because it was appropriate and it was based on the response that we got from the audience. In Germany, we did a whole campaign for primary school teachers in Germany in German, localized for that market, with Instagram posts and Facebook and more blogs and that sort of thing. So that's just a really nice way to show how even this very similar campaign can have very different results depending on the buyer persona and the country that you're entering.
Samantha, that's terrific. And I hope this was a great example and very telling. I want to launch a quick poll. I want to ask the audience, you know, if you're already active in Europe. Are you already doing business in Europe? Yes. Are you already there online and with an in-market partner? An in-market partner can be your own subsidiary, of course. Or yes, but only with an in-market partner like a distributor or an agent, something like that. Or yes, online only. Or are you still thinking about it and wondering if this is the right market for you or the right sector, types of markets for you? Let me give you a little bit of feedback. As far as I can see, nobody is online only. Quite a few are thinking about it, and many of you, I think, many of you have in-market partners. That seems to be the core way of going to market in Europe, is having an in-market partner for that. Thank you very much for responding to that poll. We'll have one more later on, but I very much appreciate your response on that. Thank you. I'm going to close that poll and move on to talk a little bit about the Atlantic Canada Online Global Programs and what they can get and give you as companies. Now, this is something that we've developed. As I said, we have some dedicated resources on our website for you as well. But really, the intention of all online tools is to generate sales. It's very, very much, if you like, the bottom of the funnel, as it were. It's very, very much sales-oriented tools. So it's lead generation, brand awareness, and so on. But that's why you get websites and online marketing. You get them in order to have to drive your top line. Really. And here I've listed some of the sort of reach the markets, cover your brand awareness, and so on. But it's all about getting sales to the door. And we've sort of put them into 3 categories. We've designed products for you, which we think are match some of your needs for company needs. The first option really is an option A, as we call it option A, and that can either be 1 or 2 markets that you've chosen, and they can be, France and China. It can be Germany and Brazil, whatever it is that you want. But the scope is quite well defined. It's these many pages, that kind of scope that we'll have, this kind of template for that. And then the option B is much more like, well, hold on, yes, I want that market, but I have a very different scope. So you define the scope of work. You say, I want a complete redesign. I need to have new content. It needs to be integrated into my CRMs, all that. So that's a sort of customized market expansion, or else it's a direct e-commerce option for you. And again, this is slightly dependent on how many SKUs, how many stock keeping units you want. That. So the scope of work and the budget depends on the number of SKUs, but there's quite a nicely defined product that you can easily slip into. We give them some examples. So option A would be sort of, it's one or two countries, very much a predefined scope, but these are very, very effective websites. They're totally localized. And in Europe, for example, they would be totally GDPR compliant. Impress them, data protection, cookie and privacy policies absolutely integrated into the websites. The total cost of the budget of the websites 16,000, but there's a very, very generous grant that Erin mentioned earlier. So if you are interested in that, as Erin said, these are limited time and limited number of places available. So there's quite a few different types of reasons you would do this. This is an example here of a company who really wanted to make sure that they had brand consistencies. They chose Mexico and Saudi Arabia for that, and obviously it's all about brand awareness and so on. That's actually an e-commerce enabled one as well. So there you have the Saudi Arabian one, and their Mexican website, which we built for them and they now use. Option B, much more, as I said, is you defining the scope and you saying, okay, I need something that has a different scope, or I just totally need to redo the entire website. Fine. And again, the grant is still available for that, for those international websites as well. So even if you don't have a predefined scope, the Atlantic Canada Online Global Program has defined grants for that. And there's lots of examples we can give you of these. Here's another example of actually it's actually a UK company. It's just bought, it's not UK, and did a China website for them. And by the way, you can go onto our website and check out all the case studies. We have videos on other clients talking about it. And the third option really is about e-commerce. And again, as I said, there's different sort of we've tried to sort of map out what would possibly be, obviously the 3 types. There's even an extra large one, but I've just put 3 on the slide. The budget for the small one, and that's not small, it's 100 SKUs, so it's a good size already. Small is 16,000, and as I said, there are grants available. Medium 26, and the very large would be 40 for the e-commerce site. And I can give you a lot of examples of what those sort of things look like. Here's one from Frapepin. This is their Brazil website, which is they decided they wanted their own totally integrated, totally independent e-commerce website, which was full gateways for payment and all plugins. So that was what we built for them. And I'm going to ask Erin now to talk a little bit about what those grants are and what the procedure is for the program. Erin.
Thanks, Susanna. So as I had mentioned earlier, it's application based. You have to apply, and then after that process, then we would have a meeting. If once you're approved, you have a meeting with IBT Online to figure out which one of these options that would be the best fit for your company. So when you do go online, it is just one application for all 3 options. And then we go from there. We've got 20 spots available, and the deadline to apply is December the 17th, the end of these webinar series. One of the things we want to see is that you've participated in the webinars or have watched them if you didn't actually come to the live version of it, that you've watched them. So you've got that background knowledge of all the different tools that have been introduced. So encourage you to apply.
Thank you, Erin. And we will put those URLs in the chat box now. Before we go on to questions, I wanted to ask the audience as well. You know, have you already applied? Do you have an interest in applying? Do you have all the information you need? Are you still thinking about it? So if again, just a little poll. You know, if you have thinking about it still, or have you already applied, or if you're gathering your material. Apparently, it's not a very long process. You just have to. Erin tells me it takes about 15 minutes to do the application once you get all your data together. So thank you very much for that. Just to let you know, it seems like a lot of you are still thinking about the application, which is great to see. And we look forward to circling back with you at some point and learning more about those aspirations you have on that. Right, I'm going to close that webinar. That poll. Thank you very much indeed. And we're going to really just turn to some of the key action points and takeaways, and then Q&A. Samantha, do you want to take us quickly through the takeaways?
Yeah, let's do it. So why do Canadian exporters need online business development tools? It's because the world is online, and specifically Europe is very, very online and very connected. So everybody that you want to do business with now and in the future, they are going to be online, and they're going to be interacting with companies like yours online. So to help you be found, be understood, and be easier to do business with in Europe, we want to make sure that you localize your website along with your online marketing for those specific markets. And we know this because, like I said, Europe is online. So as we saw in the previous slides, that more mobile connections than people. More than 20 million people became active social media users just in 1 year, and this was back in January. So everybody is online in Europe, and they're connected. So if you want to tap into that market, make sure to be able to be easily findable in Europe. So we have this wonderful online global series for you guys. We just went through global e-commerce. And online in Europe. We have more webinars in line for you guys, including South Korea. I know we have one on the US that's coming up towards the end. So make sure to join those webinars. All the links are available on our website on that link that you see below. So please register, join. Even if you can't join that specific date and time, we will send you a recording of the webinar afterwards. So please register. And of course, take advantage of the Atlantic Online Global Canada programs. Copy and paste the links to those surveys or the applications into the chat. So it's nice and easy for you guys to apply, but there's a ton of grant funding. It's just going to benefit you in your top target markets. So please take advantage of the program, and we would love to chat with you guys afterwards. So in terms of next steps, make sure to check out the webinars and sign up, like I mentioned. Get your teams together, get your colleagues together via Zoom, and decide if the Online Global program is right for your company and which target markets you want to approach first. And then, of course, apply. So we will copy and paste those links, so it's nice and easy, but make sure to apply because there is a deadline in December, and there are limited spots available. So take advantage of it, apply, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon. And I think with that, we have a little bit of time left for questions.
We have a little bit of time for some questions. First of all, so thank you, a big thank you to you, Samantha, for presenting, and as always, Erin, for sticking with us all this time, and being the manager behind all this, the person who pulls all the strings. So questions, there's a couple that have come in, and I just also wanted to remind you, yes, you will be receiving this as a recording, but a couple of questions, I guess. Samantha, how about one for you? We have a European distributor. What role should they play on a European website? Samantha?
Yeah, of course. So It's great that you guys have a distributor. That's a phenomenal step. We always suggest, so by having a localized site, it's not going to step on your distributor's toes. We actually aim for the localized site and the online marketing to be additional marketing and sales tools for your distributor. So we can create the localized website, and then we can link it to your distributor site. So when somebody actually wants to purchase it, they can go to your distributor site. We can send them the contact us forms. We can send one for you and one for your distributor. So that sort of relationship totally depends on you as a company and how you kind of want to handle it. But if you have a really good relationship with them, we can even include them in the website build process. They can review the translation. They can, if they want to write a blog or something, and we can surround it with social media and help drive traffic to it. We can make it a very symbiotic relationship with your distributor.
Thanks, Samantha. I wanted to add as well, a lot of our clients also use their websites in order to find distributors and find new distributors. So just even adding a page that says, interested in becoming a distributor, and then a contact form helps, can help you find distributors in new markets, which is always a good thing to have in Europe. So that seems to be the main route to market for most of you. Samantha, another question just on social media. So if they're all different markets, how many should I have? Should I have multiple Facebook pages?
That is a great question. So it's kind of like the same thing as domains, where it's either a laser or shotgun approach, and it also depends on who you're trying to target. Because if you're going into the UK market and you're speaking English, you can probably get away with just having your one Facebook page and do it in English for the UK and for the US or for Canada. And same thing goes for French. So it kind of just depends on what your marketing strategy is, what your goals are, who you're trying to target, because there's benefits and negatives to both. If you have multiple Facebook pages, it's a little bit more to manage, but it's going to be very targeted, and the people who go onto that Facebook page aren't going to be bombarded with messages that they can't even understand. So it depends on your company, your resources, your goals, your time, all of that stuff.
Thanks, Samantha. Samantha, again, another question for you. You said European domain names are not expensive. How much do they cost?
Yes, so domain names I think are about 50 euros annually. So especially compared to somewhere like the Arab Gulf countries, they are considered pretty cheap.
Yeah. I mean, they vary obviously, but they're not expensive in Europe. Yeah, about 50 euros. Dollars, about that. And I see that Samantha's now posted that in the chat box. We're sort of rounding up now. I wanted to thank again Samantha for doing a great presentation. Thank you very much indeed, especially on the having a little technical difficulty and be able to circle back. That was great. Thank you very much. Erin, as always, thank you for attending, for being clear about the Authentic Canada Online Global Program, the grants, the funding, the application, what it all means, and helping the companies individually when they do apply. And then most of all, thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you all online or even perhaps in person soon. Be lovely to meet. Okay, with that, we're going to close the webinar. Thank you all very, very much. We hope to see you on our next webinars, or as I said, perhaps even in person one day. The last question. Okay, thanks. And thank you all very, very much indeed. And happy trading, happy all of you. Okay, bye. Bye-bye.